Welcome to the Health Fix podcast, where health junkies get their weekly fix of tips, tools, and techniques to have limitless energy, sharp minds, and fit physiques for life. Hey, health junkies. On this episode of the Health Fix podcast, I'm interviewing Marcell Hanson. She's a dynamic American-Canadian entrepreneur, metaphysician, and a high-performance trainer with a wealth of experience in health, wellness, rest, work-life balance, parenting, and nutrition. Marcell has dedicated her life to empowering busy moms to find a balance between their personal and professional lives. And today we're going to be talking about how to stay healthy while you're busy. And the idea here is Marcell's got this stable table concept, and she's been using this concept for over 25 years. And it's a proven wellness routine that's designed to help women drastically improve their mental health, their energy, their physical performance, and really just stay sane in trying to juggle health and entrepreneurship. And so we're going to talk about all the aspects of it. She's going to give some interesting insight and what she's tried, what's worked, what's not, and just the overall, I guess you could say, tips that she has are really well tested. Let's put it that way. And she's got a lot of good info. So sit back, relax, and let's introduce you to Marcell Hanson. Marcell, welcome to the Health Fix podcast.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Well, my goodness, we definitely have some things to talk about. And for when I saw what your specialty was, I was like raising my hand up, like, and jumping up and down. Yes, please help us. Because as I shared before we jumped on, a lot of my folks, they are looking for, how do we juggle this becoming a coach, becoming an entrepreneur, and health? Because seems like when you try to focus in one area, other things fall apart. And I find it almost like this is where we start to get that imposter syndrome, or we start to feel like, man, I don't know if I should be doing this, because we're working so hard to get clients. All of a sudden we're grabbing snacks, and dinner becomes popcorn and a glass of wine instead of salads and things. So tell us a little bit about how you came to find the rhythm that you're teaching folks today.
You know, it's so true. I can empathize and certainly resonate with grabbing the snack and needing to nourish yourself on some level when time is short and it's dwindling down, and you're trying to help other people get their game in order, right? And you got to kind of keep yours in balance. How does that all work? For me, you know, it started almost 30 years ago. And it started accidentally. I think I just kind of stumbled into, I'll say I'm a problem solver is what I feel like I do best. And I had a problem. Started actually with my menstrual cycle. I was missing months, and I was like, I don't think this is right. It seems like I should have this every month. And while public education was not the greatest, I did figure out that much. And so I luckily stumbled upon an amazing naturopath in the Seattle area, actually. And that's where it all began. And it began from a little bit of my self-awareness, and then a whole lot of leaning on someone who knew more than me. And I think that's where that first step for everybody happens, is like, I can only do so much within my own bubble if I don't have the information. Now, this was 30 years ago. So I was going to the library. YouTube was not what it is today. Google was not what it is today. So researching by reading books and things were a little bit on the, slower pace. Now you can pop open your phone and ask Siri or Alexa and have answers, whether they're correct or not. Well, might come back to that within seconds. And, So what I did was I ended up meeting with this naturopath, and she laid out a plan for me and said, let's do the blood work. Let's find out what these markers are, and then we'll make a plan. We did that. I executed on that. And then it all sort of started a long journey of more self-awareness, more tracking, more testing, more tweaking, more self-awareness, more tracking, more testing, more tweaking. And that just has continued, and it still continues. So anybody who thinks you're done after, finding out a way, I guess if I could impress anything a message that someone would hear today, and hopefully help be more gentle with themselves, is that while consistency is important, like showing up every day, doing these very small little habits, creating a routine and a healthy household is vital. Over time, it does create, a great momentum, and it creates a lot of change for the better. That changes. What I did in my 20s to become healthier, I applied in my 30s, and it didn't quite work. I had to do other things. I had to tweak those. I was in a different place in my life, and certainly in my 40s, and maybe some people out there can resonate. Now that I'm 50, it changes. What I did 3 years ago to be like at my most optimal health and vibrancy gets me at about 60% today. Mm-hmm. And that's just the truth. And I'm a tracker. Like, that's where I think that I've been able to help share my journey and my sort of wellness path, is by I've documented this for 20 years, like religiously, more so with actual bio trackers. So I have a number of, little tools and helpful things that help me out that keep digital track. But I have literally written down, the time I went to bed, how I felt that day, if I was hydrated, really the My Stable table that we'll get into a little bit. I clocked all these metrics for 20 years and I can see correlations. I can see causation. So it takes a while, but I really have enjoyed it because it has empowered me to have control over like one thing. Mm-hmm. I can control my response, my attitude to whatever happens. And it's been a fantastic journey thus far. I got another 100 years. I'm going to 150. So I think I'm on a good pace here.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yes, me too. I'm trying to get into those hundreds and double digits in there. Definitely. And I think that's something, really important that you brought up, is that it keeps changing. I think a lot of people, and myself included, I think it took me even a while to really realize that your health isn't like a to-do list. It's not this check the box and be done. And when you are a to-do list type A, I get things done, cross them off the list, and we have that satisfaction. I think it can be really frustrating mentally to be like, really, I have to keep tweaking this?
Yes, exactly. And you're right. It's not static. And I don't think that I really realized that until I was 50, to be honest. As I changed things, they changed so subtly. I was like, okay, well, yeah, I kind of did that before and it worked, but now I have to enhance that ever so much, or I have to get a little more sleep, or go to bed just a smidge earlier, or walk at, a little bit longer in the morning or after dinner. But it was in this last year that I've looked back and said, geez, this has changed so many times, because I go back and read what I've documented and what's gone on in my 20s, 30s, 40s, and now 50. And it really does. It changes. And what I guess I want to stress to everyone is that it changes differently for everyone. Like, that's where I get a lot of clients that I've worked with, and even friends and family that I talk to, they shoot themselves in the foot by comparing themselves to others. And I know we want to find likeness, and we want to feel a part of, and there's a community of people that feel this same, attribute, or the same sort of characteristic. They feel similar. It's not. Even if I'm sad and you're sad, Jannine, our sadness is not the same. It comes from a different place. It comes for a different reason. It shows up differently. I exhibit it differently. I may be bawling my eyes out, and you may be just a little sniffle, and you're gutted. And I'm just like, I don't know, something. I cry over a lot of things, so I don't know what some small thing could have happened. Like, our sadness is not the same. Like, nothing is the same. And that's what I think some people could take that in an overwhelming state, but in an awesome state, like AWE, I'm in awe of how there is so much variety and so much likeness. Like if you can accept the variety, you can kind of see that we are fundamentally the same. But how we show up, the exercise routine that I do may not work for you at all and yours for me, right? And certainly now that I do a time restricted diet, I'm perimenopausal. But I would not recommend that for women in their 30s. These have huge impacts on hormones, on circadian rhythm. These like this activity it's a big craze right now, right? Everybody's like intermittent fasting and time restricted eating and various diets and what have you. These can really be detrimental to a woman in fertile ages. Like if she plans on having a baby, I would highly recommend to not be obsessive about working out these aerobic activities every single day, and the HIIT and the CrossFit that are really hard might make you feel good. They might have a very detrimental impact on your adrenals, on your hormonal cycle. That isn't the easiest to get back. I'm not saying anything's not reversible. A lot of things that we deem as, not a death sentence, but diabetes. I mean, it does sound very strong. The silent killer. Diabetes is reversible in almost every instance, or very manageable in many, many instances through diet, nutrition, movement, sleep. I mean, yes, I'm sorry to say if the pharmaceutical companies, want to come after me, but this is they might lose business if people can see that this is a case. Like if you take control over your own body and your own wellness and make good decisions for yourself, these pharmaceutical businesses the company might lose a little sales. So
I'm okay with that. That's the goal. That's the goal here.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely want folks to be able to take their health into their own hands, not rely on the medications, and definitely makes sense, especially when it does come to things that unfortunately we've been kind of brainwashed to think that diabetes is like, the silent killer, death sentence kind of thing, and there's nothing, once you get it, that's it. But no, absolutely not. And I'm glad that you're sharing that with folks. So one of the things that you mentioned that I think a lot of women really struggle with is seeing on social media, like this young, and this is something that I've even found myself being like, what the heck are you doing? Like younger women than I am mid 40s, and I'll see 20 somethings, 30 somethings, and I'll be like, oh, check that workout out. That's kind of cool. She looks really fit. And still in the back of your mind, you go, oh, maybe I should try that. And then there's also the women who are in their 50s and even 60s who are doing some pretty intense stuff too. And then you think, well, if she can do it, it should be good for me too. So we get really, I would say we can get really inundated with these things and think we need to go that direction. And so what do you advise for women who are just starting this, let's say, awakening into figuring out, okay, like what's good in terms of my personal wellness? Where should I start? And maybe tracking is something that you would recommend. I don't know. Give us the scoop. Where would you have people start?
You bring up a great point. I'm sure we've all fallen victim to, and I use that word very specifically, to seeing something else that's working for someone else. Mm-hmm. And the self-talk goes into, I could do that. I mean, that should work for me. And not taking into, I think that what you said was actually observant and pretty aware that you notice, here's a 20 or 30 some year old doing this workout. Like, oof, I could probably do that. Or here's a 60 or 70-year-old woman doing that workout. Then I should be able to do it just fine if I'm 30 or whatever. Taking that context and then listening to it logistically tells you otherwise. If I'm 30 and I'm looking at a woman that's 60 or 70, be like, wow, my languaging says when I'm 60 or 70, I want to be rocking it like that too. I guess I'm lucky, and maybe what I'm learning is that many people's internal talk is very different than mine. And of course, I don't know why I should be surprised, because everything is different. Mm-hmm. Everything is very unique. We're all like snowflakes, right? Very, very different. Yeah, we're all snowflakes. So that classification, we have the same. But I always start with mindset being the most important. And I was really lucky in my 20s. I studied I'm a sign language interpreter by trade, actually.
Cool.
And yeah, very cool. And what I learned in that is that sign language, because it's a visual language and I interpreted into English, my first language. You do what's called a simultaneous interpretation, as opposed to like when you hear at the UN or whatever, somebody says something and in Spanish, they're lagging behind. They're actually, it's called consecutive interpreting. In sign language, because I think somebody thought this was a great idea, because the hands are moving and the eyes can work to watch the signing, you should be able to speak at the same time. It's actually a literal dual task. It's one of the few times that your brain is actually doing two very distinctly different things at the same time, simultaneous interpreting, and it's using two different parts of the brain. And so what I learned, long story short, to make the good point, is that during that time, I could not have negative self-talk. I couldn't. My brain was already like taking in a visual image, and then I needed to get my shit together in order to spew out my first language, or vice versa. Wow. If I was, doing the opposite. And I had to rid myself. I called it the stinky committee. It was like I think of a begrudging old, like, group of old white men, that are sitting around a table like, rah, 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 negative talk. Why would you do that? That's not the right word to say. What are you, stupid? Those just like crotchety, grumbling men. And I said, one day I just said, you're fired. That was it. It literally was like, I cannot have you in there. I cannot do my job as an interpreter. And I was a student at the time. But I'm so glad I looked back, and if there was one thing that I've done as an adult that sort of was the tipping domino that kind of trickled all the rest that are still rolling, it would either be like meeting that naturopath, Lucy Smith out of Maple Leaf. Thank you. I think she's retired now, but she's fantastic. Or this, firing that stinky committee, because until literally last year, I'd never had, and I know this sounds weird, I've never had a negative thought about myself until I was knocking on the door of menopause. No, you're so stupid, or why did you do that? Not one time in like 30 years, which I realized just last year when someone told me, like, that's weird. Like, that's odd. That's not normal. Like, I have negative self-talk all day long. I'm like, how do you get anything done? Yeah. Like, how do you, of course you're overwhelmed and full of anxiety and stressed. How would you get anything done if you have someone beating you up inside yourself? Like, you can do that out in the world. You just walk out with any t-shirt that says anything, doesn't matter what it says, and you're going to have haters, right? True. Whether it's pro this or con this, you're going to have haters. You go on Instagram, you say one comment on Facebook, you'll get notifications for the next 3 weeks of how stupid you are and how ignorant you are from every direction. Why would you do that on the inside? So I think first and foremost, that's why I put mindset first. Yes, I would want everyone to practice my stable table, which I'll get into hopefully in just a minute. But mindset comes first, in that, gosh, have some grace. Like, be patient with yourself. Like, the fact that you want to learn how to be better is amazing. Like, that's what creates like thriving life instead of just like living. I think that people are I see the masses accepting a very low level of mediocrity, in my opinion. I think I heard somebody say it the other day, is that most people are living at about 50 to 60% of their potential. And if you think of, like, if we go back to grades, A, B, C, D, 50% is not even passing. Like, why would you accept 50 to 60% of anything? Yet that's how we're operating. Accepting stress, accepting this, creating an identity for ourselves that include a label, a pathology, or just painting a box for ourselves, right? And so first and foremost, I would say for me, it was, I got still. And in that moment, I hit a wall where I had to say something that I saw the message coming into my eyes, and I needed to say something out of my mouth. And my head started talking, and I was like, no, I can't do it. You cannot have negative talk while you're trying to take in a message and spit out a message in two different languages. And I just got lucky. I really feel really blessed that I just stumbled upon that forced reality. And I think if most of the people, and I don't live inside anybody else's body and mind, so I can't say, but from what I hear, feedback wise, if I could sit inside there, I would say, just be still. Like, start with being still. And that's where meditation, I do a walking meditation. I'm not one to sit literally still, but I do walk, and I let, thoughts pass through my mind, and I don't, ruminate, or I just acknowledge them and let them keep going. Some sort of stillness practice is essential just for building the foundation of, I'm okay. I'm worthy. I can do this. I got this. I have tackled X, Y, and Z, and I can do this too. Like, changing how we talk about ourselves to ourselves, I think, is essential. Like, I can listen to someone talk for about 30 seconds and I know exactly where their limiting beliefs are, what they think about themselves, because we say it. Like, if you believe it, you're going to say it. And when you say it, you'll believe it more, and it becomes very habitual. And I hear it, not to go off on the tangent, but I heard it in another podcast just recently where someone's like, that's my ADHD in me.
Yeah.
Just like, yeah, I'm just a high anxiety type of person. That's how I operate.
Wow.
Like, think of what you're saying to yourself. That's your operating system. So basically, you're a Mac with a PC operating system, and you wonder why it's not working. Like, that's how we get upgrades. That's why we refresh. That's why we close tabs on our window. Speaking of which, I'd be ADHD too. I say that with little air quotes, because I don't believe in that. But I would have a hard time focusing if I have 30 tabs open on my computer, and I'm trying to figure out, okay, I was going to order that at Amazon. I left it in the cart. Oh, I was in the middle of replying to this email, and it went to draft, and then I forgot it. And I missed a Zoom appointment. Of course, that is normal to feel overwhelmed when you put yourself in a position of overwhelm.
Mm-hmm.
But you're the one doing it. That's what I want people to hear. Is like, that's you choosing to open another one without closing another one, or to not set boundaries for your own mental wellness. So first and foremost, like, get clear in your head what you want, and then, focusing on listening to your self-talk, because that inevitably, I can teach you all kinds of habits and how to stay hydrated and eat well and move every day and get great night's sleep night after night after night. But none of that will work if you're getting up in the morning going, I hate my job. Stupid. Why did I go to college anyway? My parents wanted me to do this. I don't like cleaning teeth. I don't like being a lawyer. I don't even like this. I hate these people. And you're just of course, why would you feel? You're not going to feel good. The strategy comes after the state and the story. I grew up on Tony Robbins, so that's, you got to kind of put the cart ahead of the horse, or vice versa. Like, think of what you're doing. The horses go in the front. So mindset's first, right? Get that straight, and then executing on strategy becomes, to me, effortless. Like, if you taught me a recipe, I could make it like that. I'm not going to be in the middle of whipping eggs and going, oh, why so many eggs? Why? Why do I have to add flour? You don't do that. Like, you say, oh, you have a muffin recipe, Jannine, hand it over. Oh, I read it. I've made recipes before. I have confidence in making recipes. I'm not going to beat myself up over it. I'm just going to get out the ingredients, mix it up. And then if I come into an instance where, shit, I'm short an egg, then I go back in my little brain and go, what else can I use? Applesauce. I can use tapioca pudding. I'm a problem solver, right? So I want to find those other pieces, but I can apply all of these major like successes in my life. I can apply those to right now. It's a transferable skill. That's how I built confidence, right? For
Mhm.
those of you that are so far gone in the overwhelm, then I always start with my stable table. And my stable table will help to create self-confidence, self-competence, self-awareness. It's a system that I created inadvertently that became public, but I did it for myself and I tracked it. So tracking is part of that because that reinforces your confidence. Like I did that. It's got almost like a gold star when you were little. Somebody gives you a little check mark or something. You're like, yeah, that was me. It's a little boost, but it's all about you. It's not about showing someone else. I have 20 years of documentation. I'm not holding it up to you now going, see what I can do. It's not for you to see. It's for me to see. It's for me to know and build my own inner bank of confidence that so when shit happens and it hits the fan and the car breaks down and you miss the flight and the kids are late or you know, you're having hot flashes every hour of the day, whatever the case may be, you have this foundation. You have like I have this foundation that's unshakable. Do I still get like bonked off my feet once in a while? Not very often, but once in a while, sure. But I rebound a lot quicker because I know my truth. I know my North Star. I know where I'm going. I know what I want to leave as a legacy. I have all these things clearly lined up that they almost just pull me back into alignment. It's like an instant auto calibration, if you will. Now, if you let yourself get so far off of that, then yeah, you got to work your ass to get back to it. But once you're in your line of the North Star, you know where you're going. You don't have to think of the how all the time. I think Oprah said it as like, just need to make the next right move, like right now. And right as in what feels right to me, not what Jannine thinks, not what my parents thought, not what my neighbor's doing, what would look good, what feels good to me on the inside. And over time, what you learn is that changes a lot. What I did on, what's today, Monday?
Uh-huh.
What I did last Wednesday, I can't even do today to replicate the recovery. Like I track my recovery and strain and sleep and oxygen levels and all kinds of things. And they don't come every day. You can't even strive to have that every day. It's not realistic because our body goes through cycles of stress and recovery. You can't build a muscle without tearing it, right? So it's like you have to have that ebb and flow. And until you can like realize that that's natural, you beat yourself up. So many people beat themselves up about, oh, I didn't get to bed last night. I had one too many drinks. Blah, blah, blah. It's like, yes, don't drink, but but having the consistency that you want is not about consistently everything going well. It's about consistently you feeling good. I truly believe that's what that single thing will make the world a completely different place, is that people really feel authentic and grounded within themselves. And I call that good, not like indulgent good, but like feels great to have. I'm 50 and I'm vibrant. I don't have any aches and pains. I've never done any prescription drugs. I've never done any drugs, but I don't do prescription drugs except for sugar. I'll come back to sugar. I'm a recovering sugar addict, but I feel great. And I'm like this, and people go, oh, wow, you're 50. And I'm like, this is what 50 is supposed to be like. This is, you're supposed to feel great at every age. The body wants you to feel great and it does everything it can. It's like we are, as a society, putting so much into it, whether it's whatever toxins, perfumes, the fragrances, sugar, excess caffeine, drugs of every kind, and prescriptions, completely messing up all of our rhythms that we spoke about at the beginning, circadian rhythm, our hormones, all that. Without that, it's pretty amazing to see that there are ebbs and flows in lives and life, and how you can kind of almost ride it like you're in the ocean, right? The waves come and they go. The water doesn't just stay exactly the same. We're the same. We're like an energetic being, right? So we're ebbing and flowing. And I think if you don't have a finger on the pulse of that, then you're just, I don't know, out to lunch is what I want to say. You're missing what life is really about, because I feel like I can do anything still. It is something that my dad told me when I was a teenager, just one time said, if whatever you set your mind to, you can do. And I was naive enough then to believe him. And somehow that became my operating system. And so it has been that. So I do feel like if I wanted to train for a marathon or what have you, I feel like there's very few things physically or mentally that are limiting to me. And I want other people to know that that's accessible to them. They don't have to, they do have to get on the journey. Obviously, they might be 30 years behind me, but it's not a race, right? I'll still be going. They can go for 60 more years and I'll still be going for 100. So it's about witnessing and about being present and doing all you can to live life fully. Like I think somebody said the other day, was it Jim Rohn? Well, he didn't say it the other day because he's been passed for a while now, but a video of him said that so many people they tiptoe gingerly towards death, like trying to arrive at death's door safely. Like, what's going on here? Like living life, like we don't know. I could be as healthy as I am and healthier, hopefully, and get hit by a bus. That's just the truth of it. Hopefully my awareness and my mental awareness allows me to be responsive and pay attention and not cross a crosswalk without paying attention, or to not get myself into situations that could be dangerous per se, because my awareness is there. Mm-hmm. And I think that mental capacity, people, I think they underestimate it, but they also underestimate how capable we are of obtaining that stability, of feeling sure about ourselves, about taking, control of our own wellness. We have a great, healthcare system. I think it's a sick system. It's absurd. I stopped calling people doctors. I know I get a lot of hate for this, but they're just pharmaceutical salesmen. I mean, if you are in the masses that don't see that, and you can claim it as a conspiracy theory, that's okay. I hear that. But if you don't recognize that there's truth in that, then you are being played. You are the pawn, and you will pay a price of your healthiness and your body and your wellness and your vitality and the ability to see your grandkids graduate or your kids get married or have babies or what have you. You will miss out on that because you have given up your power to someone else who has a different agenda. And even if that agenda is not, I know many doctors and they're great people, and they're in a system that does not provide for wellness.
Yeah. Oh,
it's just a system. Okay. And that doesn't make it okay, but I'm not picking on any particular doctor per se, but Western medicine in general, it's a business. That's okay.
Absolutely. It's wholeheartedly a business. And I mean, I've felt at certain times in my life that I've been a glorified drug dealer, and it's not a good place to feel as a naturopath for that matter. It's awful. It's awful.
Yeah. Yeah, well, good for you for clearly you've gotten away from that to some degree, because I've taken in quite a bit of your content and I love it. The openness that you provide. I've taken in a number of there's just a variety that you invite onto your show, and I really appreciate that, because it shows at the core that that there's more out there, and you're not wed to one particular way. And that open-mindedness, I think, is really important for people to remember that growth is typically not comfortable, right? Yet we either grow or we die. Like this comfort that we're seeking is death. Like we have really kicked on to, not just that sort of immediate gratification. Like when you and I grew up, though we didn't know each other, there were television episodes that were on, sitcoms that were on once a week.
Yep.
And so on that Thursday night or on that Wednesday night, the family would gather around, like out of anticipation of like waiting 7 days to see what happened to Laura. That was during the daytime. That was 2:00. Luke and Laura, there he is on the patio, or whatever it is, whether it was Family Ties or, the Cosby Show, you wanted to see, or Fresh Prince or whatever. If they ran in consecutive order, you wanted to see what happened next. So you built up that anticipation, and then you got to see it and you got satisfied, you got that dopamine hit. And then they brought you to the cliffhanger again. Who shot JR? And then next week you would come back and see her at the end of the season. Now people just binge watch and just watch 20 episodes in a row. No anticipation, just like straight up addiction, like, gotta know what's gonna happen. And that, I think that is really harming us, because these things that create these habits, healthy habits and acts that happen every single day are very small, little small habits. They create big change over time. And people I see jump from fad diet to fat. First they're doing HIT 50 or whatever, and then they're going straight to Atkins, or they're doing keto, or they're doing, whatever is next. They want to do an ultra marathon. It's like, and they expect massive change to happen. It is an event, but this is a journey, right? This is I was lucky to start early enough in my 20s, but this will continue, and I will stay nimble and adapt to change until I'm gone, like my entire life. And so not being able to be like, I'm fit, this the best as I'm ever going to be, and now I don't have to do anything to continue, that is just unrealistic. It's just, everybody wants 6-pack abs, but they don't want to work out. They don't want to eat better. They don't want to do anything on a regular basis to see that change. And I think that's harmful, because lasting change is the most satisfying, in my opinion. You can get that little hit, and that's all it is. It's a little hit. I'd rather have the long burn that's gratifying over time.
Absolutely. Yeah, I see the same, like, I ran my marathon, now I'm up 30 pounds. I got to try to figure out what I did. Then it's like, oh man, but that's where your podcast comes in, the small habits, big changes. Folks, you definitely got to check that out. So tell us about the My Stable table.
I think of it as there's no pills, there's nothing that's going to be red pill, blue pill. You're going to pop it and feel better tomorrow. If you feel better tomorrow, you probably feel twice as worse 2 days later. You got to pop another pill, right? So this is all the natural performance enhancement program. And it's based around stable table legs. I don't know why I came up with it that way. It's based on adequate hydration, daily exercise, which I now refer to as movement, less foundation. The foundation is that mindset, along with like a spiritual groundedness. That's what I find the best results come from someone who believes in something bigger than themselves. The folks out there that are ready to implement not just strategies, but lifetime long habits. And these 4 habits that I've created over years, that created like a system, if you will, have done that for me. And so that's why I want to share it. So for hydration, it's really just drinking the best possible water that you can get your hands on. Half your body weight in ounces is what I find has been consistently adequate. And I will say, for today's day and age, it's gotten worse over years, our quality of water. And I don't want to complain, because there are 2 billion people on the planet that have to walk excess of 20 miles to carry back a bucket of probably what we would consider toilet water. And that's what they use, so we are blessed. We can walk to the nearest tap and turn it on, and something clear runs out. That said, there's a lot of stuff in there: fluorides, chlorine, lead, pharmaceutical juices, lots of things that come back around through our treatment, that I say you either invest in a filter, you get one, or you become one. So if you are not investing in even the minimal of a Brita, then everything that's coming out of those pipes is being filtered in your body, your kidneys, your system is working through all of that, whatever that is in there. If you haven't tested your water, you have no idea, right? So I strongly recommend some sort of filter, and to know that people still, my tips would be for that is like, in order to drink it, I need to see it. You guys can't see me now, but I have a glass of water right here. So if it wasn't here, I wouldn't be drinking it. Yep. And if it is here and I can see it, And so my brain goes, oh, you can drink that. It sounds very rudimentary and very elementary, but it's true. If you see it, you are far more likely to drink it.
Yep.
The key to hydration and the key to all of the stable table legs is tracking. And this is where I find people actually fall short. And it's so simple. I know people probably go like, I'm not a numbers person, or I don't like to, write things down, or I need an app for that. You don't. It's so simple. Like, I think on my podcast, the very first episode, I made one up right on the spot because I don't do this rubber band method, but you can just put 5 rubber bands if you are taking 5 glasses, right? 5 glasses times 16, 50. So it's 80 ounces. So if you weigh 160 and you're drinking 80 ounces of water, you put 5 rubber bands on there. And every time you finish a glass, you just pull one off and you put it onto a fresh glass for tomorrow. Something simple. Like I literally use sticky notes that are those little colored arrows that are like, sign here when you sign a document, sign here. I literally have 5 of those up on my cabinet right where I, get my water, and I just move them over every day. I have done that. I have done that specific tactic for a decade, and it's foolproof to me. And it's easy to see. I look up and go, ooh, I need 2 more glasses. It's 4:00 in the afternoon. Let's go. And there's so many benefits from water. I don't understand how people are still not knowing this, but this helps. Like, this is the volume of your blood, right? This adds to the volume of your blood. So important for regulating almost every bit of activity that goes on your body. Our bodies are, 60, 70% water. There's some argument over that, but their majority contents is water. We need water to make things work. Like, all of our organs depend on this. Our blood depends on this. This helps keep us in balance, right? Keep us regulated. And so if there's any question about that, then again, out to lunch. You gotta check in. You got to get back on this planet and know that the planet's a lot of water. We're a lot of water. We need to take in water. We function in water.
I think the biggest thing I'd be asking about, because a lot of people ask me, is they'll want to know, like, do you use a Berkey? What filtration system do you use? Like, everybody asks me that on
filtration system on the market. It's not a household wide, but it's a countertop or under countertop. And so I consider that towards the top of the rung of the ladder. So I'll give you some examples that get there. The first one's probably a Brita, which does knock out a little bit of chlorine, I believe. I used it 30 years ago, and it does have a little bit of a benefit. From there, I'd go probably to like the Santivia, something that has a 5-stage, or the Berkey. I've only drank out of the Berkey like once or twice and have never owned one, but I've heard great things about them. But the 5-stage with the initial like carbon filter, and then it goes through a number of other filters, and then it lands in, say, like rock to remineralize. That's the Santivia. It's about $100. It sits on the countertop. I had that for years. I drank distilled water for actually 1.5 years. I don't necessarily recommend that. But it literally was a distiller that sat on my counter, and that takes everything out of the water, completely strips it out, turns it into a vapor, into a steam, and then drips it back into completely. You can buy distilled water. I don't recommend that either, because it's usually in plastic jugs. But distilled water has nothing in it. So I do caution, if you do go that route, you do need to keep an eye on your electrolytes, and they sell additives that you can add to that taste like salt water. And that works. Then you get up into the hydrogen making live water options, which I use a Japanese made holistic medical device. We might just be able to put a link in the show notes, or I might be able to send you that information that you can add to your content. And you go from, a Brita being, I don't know, $50 to this system being $5,000. So along that run, I always say the most that you can afford. If you can't afford or can't choose to allocate funds to something that's more, start with I started with the Brita. I used a Brita for years because that's all I knew. And then when I knew better, like, and I made more money, I was like, oh, okay, I want to step it up. And hopefully that helps. And there's no right or wrong. It's really just what you can make work for you right now. And you won't be there forever anyway, because everything changes.
Yep. They keep upgrading and things of that nature. Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. 'Cause I think for a lot of people, it is a question, and yes, the hydrogen water, live water would be very interesting for a lot of folks. So we'll get that in the podcast notes, folks, at drjkrauseND.com. So yeah, let's move on to the movement section.
Yeah, and before I forget, there is reverse osmosis in there too, and some of and I've done that as well. I didn't dive deep into the science of that. I just go with what feels best to me and what has worked. So I'll say that there is, like, again, no wrong way to do it. Just we're looking for progress, right? Moving up the ladder.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to movement, a daily exercise, what I've always deemed it as is 10 minutes of walking outside every single day, without exception, 365 days. Doesn't matter if it's snowing, raining, blizzard, 10 minutes. You can pick the time. I think there's lots of, again, you can build hook habits around this, just like putting water on the counter is like a hook habit, because you're walking by the counter, you know you're going to go to the bathroom, you're going to see it. So you're going to grab it, right? Like building into your routine already that you have established. Maybe you get up and you go to get the mail first thing in the morning. Just hit the end of the block and come back, and you got 2-3 minutes. If you live in a high rise or whatever, maybe it's just going down to the lobby and coming back up. But outside is something I highly recommend. I personally do it with sunrise and sunset. So I'm getting some nice early morning light, which is beneficial for a million reasons. And then after dinner, after I've eaten, I typically go out for a couple of reasons at that time. One, I'm getting the sunset hours, which are great. Again, the light has wonderful impact. Both of those things impact my circadian rhythm and how I'm going to sleep, especially the morning one. People think it's more the evening one, but it's actually when you're out in the morning is when your circadian rhythm is kicking into gear and resetting. So getting up and then getting that natural light first thing in the morning is probably one of the best things you can do for the outside movement part of the table. And it isn't more is better as far as quantity of time that day. It's that you go every day. That's the kicker. And that's where people, I think, fall short, is that they're like, oh, I got so busy, I didn't get my walk in. No, this is the time you take for yourself. And again, it was Tony Robbins who said, if you don't have, 15 minutes for yourself, you don't have much of a life. And I thoroughly agree. Busy moms, busy entrepreneurs, you always have time. And if you have to do it multitasking, then do it. You're going to reply. As an entrepreneur, I run a business outside of my wellness business. I always have emails to respond to. I always have a phone message I could leave. I always have a text that I could, shoot back. Do that in your 10 minutes. There is absolutely no way no one can say they don't have 10 minutes for themselves. And it, over time, it does become more. And I really think the 10 minutes morning and night is a nice cap of like getting up, getting into your body, moving, getting in that early light. You don't have to break a sweat. You don't even have to put on like tennis shoes. You can wear regular shoes or flip-flops or whatever is supportive to your foot. I currently use a barefoot technology, which I'm loving. I highly recommend. Though getting out there in the morning, great way to start your day. Just breathing fresh air, fantastic. In the evening, great way to wind down. It's really not that huge of an allotment of time. But why I stress the every day is that the stable table in and of itself is just like it's a framework of healthy habits. But so much more is built within them when you practice it. Kind of like, you'll probably get the gist is that if you go out and you commit to yourself, I'm going to walk every single day, 10 minutes, whether I'm listening to a podcast, whether I'm calling and talking to my dad, whether I'm going to connect with my best buddy, or maybe I get a different best buddy every day. You use that 10 minutes this is when I can make an excuse to be a good person and take care of other people while you're really secretly taking care of yourself. Like if you have to trick yourself into doing it, go ahead. Because the benefits are, if you do that every day, over time, I can almost guarantee that 1, you will believe in yourself more. 2, you will have more self-esteem. 3, you will have ample confidence, because these things all kind of run together. You will confidence, after confidence comes competence, right? And then you reinforce those over time, that this is something you do for yourself, that you don't let anyone else restrict, that you do not give up on, even if you don't feel good. What's funny is after you walk for a while each and every day and you commit these things, you don't ever not feel good. Like you want to get into your body. That's your goal. You don't have, people go like, oh, but I'm just tired, I hit the snooze button. No, you won't. After time, you just have to trust that after you've stepped on the first rung and the second rung, maybe you can't even see the top rung, but it's there. You just have to keep going.
I think that covers it. I think it's nice to hear, I think it's refreshing to hear that you're not killing yourself in the gym, which I think a lot of people do still think that that's the way to move forward. And unfortunately, I see all the time not the case. And walking, I mean, I love walking. It's so underrated for its great benefits. And like you said, you discover new things. Plus the mind just does some really cool stuff and gets ideas. At least I find while I'm walking too, that kind of walking meditative mode that goes into there. So yeah, good stuff. So let's talk about nutrition, because I think that's one of the biggest habits that falls to the wayside when someone becomes really busy as an entrepreneur, or even just in life in general. It's like somehow that just tanks for some reason. It is like the habit that goes to crap.
It is, I see on my, I don't pay too much attention to the statistics or the analytics on the podcast or my social. I glance at them because we want to meet a demographic that has a need, but altruistically, I just want everyone to benefit. But I see that the nutrition content is always the highest, always. People are all over like, how can I eat better? How can I do this? I think, again, everything sort of ties into one another. If you're not hydrating and you're not moving, and we'll get to sleep next, but if you're not sleeping well, you're going to eat like shit. That's all there is to it. It's highly unlikely that you're going to be able to manage good, healthy nutrition without being hydrated, without moving to stimulate your body, and without sleeping well. So they really do all go together and they feed off of each other. A good night's sleep makes it so easy to get up and pop out into the sunshine and have a good walk and move your body. And of course, with that, you're going to build up a thirst probably. So you're going to have that hydration. You're right. I think that most people do fall short and really miss their expectations around nutrition. And again, it's not a quick fix. So it is something that requires habits and a structure and building those habits to sustain, ongoing healthiness, ongoing wellness. A few things. How we eat is really important. When we eat, also important. What we eat, actually less important than those two things, as controversial as that may sound. But there's a boundary there, right? I would say first and foremost, everybody is going to be different. My route may not work for others, though I did progress quite slowly. Like, I have this conversation with my sister a number of times. We have very different, we grew up in kind of different households. Like, she was off and gone with both parents in the house. And then my brother and I were kind of raised just by my dad. And so we made our own food versus they had like kind of family food more often. So even within the same family that we grew up, we have very different eating habits from a young age. But when I started and I went and saw that naturopath in my early 20s, one thing was she gave me some recommendations, like, let's work on your omega fatty acids. So, eating salmon, like that was a big thing. And I had a major sweet tooth because all I did was eat processed food and sugar, like straight up table sugar on a regular basis as a child, sugar on top of sugar on top of sugar. And so I'd really just, like, from a traditional Chinese perspective, I just was slamming my spleen. It just was working overtime, trying to keep me functional. I had very low body fat. I was what others would deem on the verge of maybe fat skinny. because I've always been thin. I've never, ever been overweight. But I come from a big family. So most of my family who are eating some of the same things, strangely enough, are bigger. And so I think that kind of opened my eyes to like, wow, this is kind of my own individual journey. Like what other people are doing may not work for me. And I always thought going into advising, clients early on about health is like, eat the leafy green vegetables, everything else in moderation, cut out the processed foods, limit your sugar, your gluten, your caffeine, certainly non-GMO and locally sourced, all these things. You can say all those things. At the end of the day, it is absolutely so individual. I have had my gut tested. I've had a microbiome test. I've had my DNA test for my methylation markers. I've done a Dutch test. I've taken every assessment that you can possibly take in blood tests. And what I know without any doubt in my mind or being is that everyone is so very individual, because what's going on inside your body, we have no idea. Like I've done a ton of personal like biohacking, and I still look at it and go like, wow, there's a lot to unpack here. Cut out processed food. And when I say processed food, I mean, it will sound drastic, but anything in a bar, in a box, in a box, in a bag, has a barcode, any of that, and any fast food. That would be your first sort of step. And if you have to step many, but these things I just figured out by really hard trial and error. And I just would recommend that someone get their DNA tested for this, because, and there's a couple companies out that do it pretty prominently in the States.
Like,
but you get it done once, right? And then you can get it done even as a child. You can get it for your child. It's like $500 test. You get it once, and that will never change. Your genes will never, ever change. But then you're not guessing at, maybe I should take some ashwagandha because I'm a little stressed, or maybe I need more vitamin B12. I did that and I overmethylated myself, which is crazy because I'm pretty conscientious and I know how to read, but I ended up taking too much B12, and my heart was racing, like, because it was having a response to like, hey, what is going on? You have too much in here. So like the body will respond appropriately, but we don't all have to be, guinea pigs and biohackers. We could just take a test and then have the answers and then be like, then appropriately supplement for those, those mutations. I think it's easy. I've certainly fallen prey to, thinking that someone says, again, looking at someone else going, they said they were tired, so they started taking vitamin D. I'm like, oh, I wonder if I need vitamin D. And then we have very expensive apothecaries of, cupboards full of very pricey supplements. And then we take them and we're like, we don't really feel any different. Well, it's because it wasn't what you were missing.
right.
So, but then we have a cupboard full of it, and then we're like, well, we don't want it to go to waste, so let me take it anyway. Or we do silly things. We wrap our head around like, why can't we just figure out what's wrong with me and fix it? Well, because there's like literally a trillion things that it could be, combinations of such. And so me giving advice or sharing particulars about eating is really tough when I know this to be the case, is that everyone is different. Yeah, the nutrition, I really highly recommend looking at outsourcing for those that don't have the time or don't have the inclination. If you like to cook, it's different. If you like to cook, set aside 1 to 2 days a week where you're meal prepping. So you are putting fresh food in a preferably glass container into your refrigerator, ready to grab, whether it's carrot sticks, celery sticks with some peanut butter, or, healthy groups of food that you can grab and take with you. That said, as I say that, because I'm on a little bit of a biohacking kick around my glycemic index and glycemic management, I've cut out all snacking. And it has been a challenge. I will not lie. I'm very thin. I have a fairly robust and hyperactive metabolism. So I've had to really emotionally readjust, and am currently still doing this, adjusting my view on what hunger is and when I need to eat. And it goes back to that comfort piece is that we weren't meant to snack. Our bodies, as archaic as our mechanism is, we weren't meant to snack all day. That just wasn't a realistic thing back in the day. And I'm not one to necessarily compare that, but if you look at like I think it's a human genome is what we call it, right? Over 10,000s of years, we've changed less than like 1/10 of 1%. Like we're essentially the same bodies, digestive wise, metabolism wise, as we were, in the caves, where we would like go out and find food. We'd feast and famine. It'd be like you'd eat and be like, you had to eat it while it was fresh. No preservatives, weren't sticking it on the shelf for 2-3 years, like some of the food, quote unquote, that people eat now. And then you went you went for a while. You could go days, 3 days, 4 days, right? Easily, and not eat. But we're grazing all day long. And I think if we look at what I'm finding, I'm looking at is the emotional pull of like, why do I want to eat? Oh, I just smacked my toe into the side of the bed and it's throbbing. My first thought is I could go get a pump cake.
Yeah.
And so, or it's late at night. It's for me, that's 9:30 and I'm ready to go to bed, but I feel this little rumble and I'm like, I could just have just a smidge of something. And I'm not talking junk at all. I have no processed food in my house. The pump cakes those are my pumpkin pancakes, my staple that I talk about a lot. They are processed in that I make them fresh myself. So I know exactly what's in them, but they do have cassava flour in them. And so that flour is processed. So that's what I mean by processed for me. There's nothing in a box. My only can is a pumpkin and the coconut milk. Like everything else is fresh. So I'm not sneaking off and eating Skittles, which are like death in a bag, or anything like that. But still, I'm wired, and I've reinforced that wiring for many, many years that I can just go get a snack. Like I'm not in the caves, And my argument to myself is like, it's right there. Like, it's going to go bad. Whatever thing you have going on is interesting to see that actually my body does better when it's not snacking. I have many, many biometrics that show that I sleep better, that show that I feel better because I've documented that my heart rate variability is higher and better. My resting heart rate is lower. My stress is lower. My recovery comes quicker when I'm not snacking. I just did this. Actually, I just calculated this last night for the last 2 months. And it's just clear as day. It's clear as day, the data. So in that, I say, okay, well, if I want to be the best to my body and I want my body to be the best for me, then I'm going to do things that reinforce that. And so at this point, it's a little bit of willpower, but it's also many, many years of reinforcing that I want to be healthy. And that's my North Star, is living as healthy as I can. And so I'm not tempted. I also don't have shit in my cupboards. You won't open my cupboard and like Oreos spill out. Don't have things in your cupboards that you are not meant to consume, because when they're in there and in a weakened state, which could be fatigue, could be you're up in the middle of the night because you have hot flashes, could be you had a tough day. When you open the cupboard, if there's shit in the cupboard, you're going to consume shit. It's very simple and straightforward. If you open the refrigerator and there's soda and, Cokes and beers or whatever, orange juice, killer culprit. Last liquid I kicked was orange juice. Eating is a big, big thing because we do it so many times a day. But if we cut that back to a time restriction of, let's say, everybody can do 12 hours. You should easily go 12 hours, 6 at night, your dinner's over till 6 a.m. Let your body regenerate. Let it do its job and digest that food before you're stuffing more in it. What I'm seeing, the biggest thing, to be honest, and it's scary, Jannine, because I eat really well, is that everything you do and everything you put in your mouth affects your glucose levels, your blood glucose, everything. Yeah. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's a carb. It doesn't matter if it's sugary. It doesn't matter if it's protein. You eat too fast. You eat too much. You eat too close together. Your blood glucose is working. It is up there. And I was shocked by that because I've done so much. There's always more. That's what it is. There's always more. And I just take it as a an exciting thing, but I really encourage people to either test for their microbiome so they know what's going on, just overall inflammation, but diabetes, liver disease, heart disease, cancers, they all are related to what we're consuming, and plus oxidative stress, of course. But really, really, if anybody stops sugar as a result of this, I will consider my legacy complete. It only takes one person. I'm not looking for 1 million people to change, because it only takes one to do it. Because what happens is, over time, as the example that you are, we can use a little reverse psychology. If we're looking off and seeing what our neighbor's doing and thinking like, I could be doing that, like I could have 6-pack abs, then hopefully one day you look over and see that our neighbor has kicked sugar, and we can too, because it's totally possible. It is very pervasive. It is in everything. And it does sound like a big bite, but like, how to eat an elephant, just one bite at a time. Like, just do what you can. One bite at a time. Like, just do what you can. Kick processed foods as much as you can. Stop eating out at fast food restaurants. And then after that, every restaurant, to be honest, even the 5-star Michelins and stuff, they're using vegetable oil.
Yeah.
They've cut cost. Vegetable oils killing us. Sugar killing us. These are real things. They're not a conspiracy. We can do side by side. Anybody who wants to come and like do a side by side intensive with me, I can prove to you in very little time how you will feel so much better to kick these things. And on top of that, it's long term. These are things that are deteriorating us slowly, and then one day you've gotten to the point where your blood can't get through. If there's only so many blood thinners you can take, your blood will not get through a closed vessel. And so to avoid these things, that I'm okay if something kills me on the spot, if I walk out and hit a bus, I'm not okay with like letting my health deteriorate to the point where I'm debilitated by a stroke, because I could have avoided that. That curiosity, like developing that curiosity around yourself and how it works, is essential, because nobody has the answer for you. That's what we've been taught to believe. So you go to the doctor and the doctor tells you. No doctor knows shit about me. And I will tell any of my doctor friends or any of my doctors about that. Like, it's impossible for you to know more and have more insight about what's going on in my body than I do. Yeah. Now, if I can express to you clearly what's going on, we could probably have a dialogue about what possible causes could be. But honest to goodness, like with the tests that I've done, there's no likelihood that I'm going to walk in and a doctor's going to be like, oh, it's this. It's just so slim. So finding out knowing your own information. And then if you want to bring it to a naturopath, or I use a Chinese doctor myself, then you share it with them. So someone else is on the path with you, and they could say, oh, remember when you did this? And they can just be to help you, hold you accountable, but they're not telling you what's best for you. There's a distinction there. And I think that's really important, is that you know what's best for you. That information resides within you, whether you are aware of it or not, but it is in there. And if you can't get to it, trust me that it's unlikely most people can get to it. You have the key. It's a special key that like you can go in and unlock your history, your potential, your needs, your wants. You can unlock that. And with the help of some assessments like the microbiome test, or with the help of like a filtration system, you can keep things moving along well. But this is the puzzle for you to figure out. Like this, there's nothing more important than knowing how you work and how you operate. It will answer every question you've ever had about your personality, what you think is your personality, your characteristics, your foundation, your constitution, your abilities. It answers it all if you're willing to listen and have a conversation with it, because that's all the body's doing, is just communicating with you. Sending you a bloat means like you ate something that doesn't work in our system. Doesn't mean do it again. It means figure out what it is.
Yeah, no, exactly. Our bodies will send off those signals big time. And that's something that, of course, is very important. And what I want folks to take away from all of the podcasts that I do is that you are in control. You have the ability, you are your own best doctor. All you need anybody else for is to help you with accountability and help you get out of your own way.
100%.
You've got this. So Marcell, let's tell folks about your website, your podcast, because marcellhanson.com and guys, I'll let her spell her name and do the whole thing for you there, but it's marcellhanson.com. And then we also have the podcast, Small Habits, Big Changes, which is quite inspiring for all the little tidbits of information that Marcell's giving. So Marcell, tell folks how they can work with you, where to find you, and all of that good stuff.
Yeah, the Small Habits, Big Changes podcast is drops every Wednesday on Any or All, just like yours does, Any or All. I'm also on YouTube, where you find your podcast. You can go to the website, it's marcellhanson.com, which is MarcellHanson.com, or I believe that you can find it under mystablетable.com. And, I think that listening to podcasts like yours and hopefully like mine and many others out there is really valuable, but then you have to take action. So many people know what they should be doing or what would help them, and yet they're just not taking action. And so I would encourage people not to get into the cycle of analysis paralysis, an overwhelm of information, because really all the information, like you said, it's within themselves, and you have the power to, make that change. And small changes, small habits that you do every single day really are where the payoff is long term. And the last thing about sleep is all I ever say to start is just go to bed earlier. Go to bed in the 9 o'clock hour if you can. And if you currently go to bed at midnight, back it up a half hour and do that for a week or two, and then slowly creep back into a more stabilized circadian rhythm.
Well, thank you so much, Marcell, for sharing so much information. I have no doubt that folks are going to be able to take away a lot of takeaways from this podcast, and I look forward to hearing their feedback and doing some more podcasts chatting about all things health with you. So thanks again for coming on.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Health Junkies, are you feeling just off? Feeling like you're aging a little bit faster than you want to and wondering what in the world is up? Hey, I might have some answers for you and some direction. If you want to chat with me, I am offering complimentary calls right now. You can head over to Dr. spelled out JKRAUSEND.com. Take my quiz, click on the schedule a chat, and let's talk and see if we can get you in the right direction. And if I'm able to help you, I'm going to let you know. Otherwise, I'm going to help you find what you're looking for. Head over to drjkrausend.com and check it out. Hey, fellow health junkie, thanks for listening to the Health Fix podcast. If you enjoyed tuning in, please help support me to get the word out about the podcast. Subscribe, rate, and review, and just get that word out. Thanks again for listening.